Hey, everybody. I think we are live now. Okay. All right. Let's see how we're doing. All right. How's it going, everyone? We've had a really busy week. I had two really long, very busy live streams, but one was with my friend Skepticus, fantastic channels. Check out his channel, check out our chat. Skepticus, we had a great conversation. We had a really great conversation with Brooklyn Lou, who's a really great atheist YouTuber as well. They're both actually atheists, and we had really nice conversations. So, but this is an open chat where you all get to join and you all get to ask me questions. So we're going to talk about whatever you all want to talk about. And while I am here in the chat, oops, let me add the comment. It's just going to take a second here. I'm just going to this very live stream and adding a comment. Here we go. Just so that you all can join the chat. All right, here's the comment right here. And this is the link to join the chat. So that's a link to join the live stream for anyone who's interested. And now that link is pinned. So if anyone wants to join the conversation, that's how you would join. Now, usually when we do these chats, I do an open panel, but I think for this time, what I'm going to try to do is more of a 1v1 type format. So we'll probably bring people up individually, have a quick conversation, and then try and bring up the next person. So it'll be more sequential than me and like 6 other people. But we'll see how it goes. I definitely want to be able to play it by ear. All right. I do have some topics of conversation, as I always do. So let me. Oh, hi, Michael. Really great to see you. Michael says, "Hey, Tavo." Jesus says, "Yo, fam, how is everyone? Really good to see you all. Lots of people in the chat already. That's great. And I appreciate the chat's Macintosh Pro as well. All right. Well, let me go through some of the comments, some of the topics that I thought we would talk about today. And this is just sort of an invitation. And hello also to A Christian 11. Always love seeing you. You left some really kind comments recently, and I really appreciate them. Sometimes I get discouraged in doing this whole YouTube journey. Being a social media content creator is really not my thing. So I really appreciate the positive feedback that I've gotten. All right. So we're going to talk about, these are the topics that we could talk about today. I'd love to know your insights on these topics as you're in the comments section or in the chat. And don't forget, there is a link in the chat now, so you should be able to see that link. And if anyone needs to join, you're welcome to. Also, I want to remind you all again that this has been a really hectic week. It's been really chaotic. I have a friend who's in the hospital right now. So if I have to hop off, that's the reason why. Human A113, what's up? I don't think I've seen you before. I don't think I recognize your name, but really happy to have you here in the conversation. All right. So again, this is open panel, so anyone can join. So if anyone wants to say anything, hop into the chat. If anyone has any topics you want to bring up, you can bring up topics. Here's the list of topics that I wanted to bring up. And all right, the first one is, I've talked before about my calibrated uncertainty. So as I've said in the past, my thesis is that I think that it's likely that there is a God. But I'm about 50 to 55% sure of that. But I'm much more certain that if there is a religion that's true, that it's Christianity. And I've made that point in the past, but I'd love to know your questions about that. Does anyone have any questions about that? My calibrated uncertainty, why I often talk about that. And we'll bring in Human A113. Hey, Human, can you hear me?
Hello. Yes.
Hey, really great to see you. Let me introduce the rest of the topics, but you don't have to stick to these. These are just sort of my suggested topics of conversation. All right. So this is the first topic, my calibrated uncertainty. Next topic. I would just love to know what you guys want me to talk about on this channel. I have some really great content coming up, but please let me know your topic suggestions. It can be a topic for an open chat, a topic for a conversation with an atheist, or a conversation with a Christian, or it can be whatever topic you'd like to suggest for maybe a future video. That's the next thing. This is another thing that I wanted to talk about. Are we all excessively more trapped into echo chambers, and is that causing a problem? I'd love to know your insights on that. We're all, of course, living in echo chambers. How do we not do that? Is it becoming too excessive? How do we mitigate that tendency? Next question. The bitterness in the discourse. Things are getting bitter now. I feel like whenever you enter in a theological comment section, and people on both sides of the fence have said really terrible things to me. I've been surprised it's come from people who are very theological, very religious, and also very atheistic, and across different sides of the religious spectrum. Are we becoming too bitter, or are we becoming too acrimonious with each other? Again, how do we mitigate that? Next question. Is our theology becoming too political? Are we tying together too closely our theology and our theological views with our political views? Would love to know your insights on that. And I'd also love to know your favorite argument for whatever worldview you have. If it's Christianity, let me know. If it's atheism, if it's any other religion, Buddhism, Islam, I'd love to know your thoughts. All right, well, Human, I'll open it up to you. And what would you like to chat about?
Hi. Sorry, I wasn't super prepared.
You got to do your homework. You got to get prepared for this chat.
Yeah,
We're
I thought
all
I was
about preparation.
My bad.
No. You're fine. You're fine. What's up?
Dang, could you scroll through them again? I had one that I thought.
Oh, well, you can also talk about whatever you'd like to talk about. So these are not like you have to pick one of these. This is just like my suggested topic. So if there's anything else you want to talk about, you're welcome to. But I'm happy to scroll through them if you'd like. But
Yes.
feel free to ask me any questions.
Yeah, please scroll through them again. There was one that I was like, I'm ready to say something, but I forgot.
Okay, what's your favorite argument? That's one topic. Is our theology becoming too political? Are we marrying our theological beliefs too tightly with our theological beliefs? I think this is a real problem, frankly, for Christianity right now in the States. The bitterness in the discourse, are we becoming too acrimonious with each other? Are we losing our humanity for the comment sectionization of theological conversation? Are we trapped in our echo chambers, and how do we mitigate that? Future topic suggestions. And also, I've often talked about my calibrated uncertainty, but I wonder if that's confusing to people. So yeah, all right. So yeah, Human, let's chat.
Sweet. Okay, I remembered. This isn't like a point to argue against. It's just I think with like the echo chamber thing and people being very bitter in the way that they argue, I agree very much. Like people get very bitter and angry on both sides, and I think a big way that on a personal level, I like to deal with that for myself, and I think people in general should be doing is wanting to steelman their opponent, or like just someone with a different view. I think like if you can have a conversation with someone that has a different view than you, and you can understand what they're saying to the point where if you repeat what they're saying in your own words, that they will say, yes, that is what I believe. You understand what I'm saying, even if we disagree. Like just getting both people to truly understand what the other person is saying, and like even if they don't agree with their view, just like you understand what they're saying.
Steel manning, that's a great thing to do. It's a great technique. It makes sure that everyone's on the same footing and we all understand each other. No, great suggestion. Yeah. And what's your worldview?
I think I'm agnostic atheist, pretty leaning towards atheism. I grew up Christian, very, very hardcore. And like I had a personal relationship with God. I felt great in the church. Deconverted. The first part of it came from seeing like the Trump administration and seeing people like be super, super like willing to defend evil just because he says he's Christian. And I thought like, how can these people that are really important to me, that are a part of my life, that I can see around me, pray, and like I see them weep at the altar, and they feel so strongly convicted for like when they say a bad word, or when they don't pray for a while, or when they don't read scripture, but they feel no conviction when like advocating and saying that this really awful man is a great person and being okay with things like ICE and stuff. So that started my deconversion. And then I looked into
wow, so that's interesting. So your deconversion really started from a political perspective.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, I don't think I would have. Well, I mean, because I know for like some things like seemed off to me, but like just in my heart, like I was like I just trusted, but that there was a disconnect there, which was like I see these people who to me look just as devoted to God, but they feel no conviction, and like the Holy Spirit being with people was a big part of my belief, and I felt it myself. But these people that I truly believed had the Holy Spirit with them did not in this really important area. That kind of made it spark.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting perspective. I mean, I don't really talk politics on this channel, but although I did make a view after the passing of um, Eric Kirk was Charlie Kirk, I mean.
Yes. Yeah.
So I did make a video after his passing, but I'm of the mindset that people can be dumb and evil people, and that they can have good policies, and also people who are very smart can have bad policies, and also like as much as I would never, maybe I shouldn't get too political, but I would never vote for Trump personally.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I know that he can do good things and he can do bad things, and some of the stuff he does, I go, yeah, actually a good decision. Some of the stuff he does, I go, that's actually a bad decision. And I think that nuance, that appreciation for nuance, has been lost. And I empathize with what you're saying. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I wrote a paper about cardiomyopathy after the COVID injections, and it became a bit of a political firestorm. And I was like, I don't really care about the politics of any of this. I'm writing this paper because there's this thing that we did. There's a health consequence. We should acknowledge it. We should understand it. We should be able to treat it. But I felt like, yeah, I mean, I don't know what's causing that. I would of course caution you to separate out your political beliefs from your theological beliefs. In other words, the fact that you see these people following a political ideology that you think is odious, which in many ways it is. That's a legitimate consideration, and that. Oop, you there? Okay. Hope you're doing okay. That may have been a nose blow. I'm not sure what that was.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm good. I got some TikToks. My bad.
Oh, okay. No worries. Um, anyways, yeah, I think that does need to be parsed out. We should parse out our political views from our theological views. And you also might want to consider that maybe you were just in the wrong community. Maybe you were in a community where people were. I mean, I'm sure that wasn't the only reason for your deconversion or deconstruction. But
No, yeah.
do you want to, from the atheist, from the skeptical lens, is there anything you want to ask me as somebody who's, generally an advocate of Christian aligning sort of worldview?
Sure. And also, like, real quick, not super important, but the political thing, that was more a spark. And the spark itself was that the Holy Spirit was really important to me. And I believed it was with these people. But they could feel convictions for certain things, but they didn't for this thing that was really important to me. And that led me to like investigate more. But
Well, before you go any further, just a
right.
quick shout out to Chris Lucas, the Protestant View. I think these are really good comments. So as I'm seeing comments pop up in the chat, I'm grabbing them, selecting them, and highlighting them. So don't forget, if you're commenting in the chat and if you have something to say, I will try and highlight your comment. Sometimes I'll try and acknowledge it by saying something, and if I don't, I think it's a good comment, I'll just pop it on the screen. But keep going, Human.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you. Also, you're very respectful. Like you very much. I watched one video from you. It was pretty cool. Pretty funny.
Oh, thanks very much. Which one was it?
I think it was the one with, or I don't know if you have multiple. Emma Stone, I believe.
Oh, yeah. Let me. I will. I'm gonna take the. Let me grab a video that I made, and just I'll put it in the chat because I think this is for what it's worth for everyone who's out there. This video that I'm putting in the chat right now is, I think, the video that if you're watching my channel and you want my suggestion of the one video that you should watch, I think that's the one. But yeah, I really like doing that video with Emma Stone. I thought that was a fun one. She doesn't. I don't think she knows who I am or anything. But yeah, she's a very persuasive person. I still look at a lot of her content and watch a lot of her videos. I think she's been kind of quiet lately, but that may just be the algorithm self-selecting what I see.
I just found out about her, so I've been watching some of her videos. I don't know when the last time she posted, but
I'm bringing Max onto the stage too, Human. So I was hoping that we could kind of keep it like 1v1 or 2v1, but I think 3 people is okay.
yeah,
But Max is also on your side. So Max, you've been on the channel before. Let's let Human talk a little bit more. And I think the next question I have for Human is, what are some of your doubts that you think it would be helpful to go over, or some of your frank counter arguments against Christianity that you'd like to discuss, if that's something that I can offer?
of course, yeah. I think the problem of suffering is a good one for me. All powerful, all loving God we shouldn't be in a world with suffering. I think a lot of people usually respond with free will, and that, like, I see that, but also in heaven we will have free will, um, and it's going to be perfect. But also, this is like a little bit separate from that. I heard someone bring up a good point where it was like I know myself, and I know that the idea of hell makes me really sad, and I can't imagine being in heaven if I could, if in the worldview, I can't imagine being in heaven and knowing that like billions and billions of good and bad people, but a lot of good people burning consciously forever. And I know you don't hold that view, but even just non-conscious, like they just disappear. That's kind of sad to me. And if I can't be sad in heaven, I would feel like something is lost of me, or like it just seems a little bit off to me.
That's interesting. That's a lot of arguments. ODB Mayowa, I think that's the correct pronunciation, says, why do you work with Inspiring Philosophy and YouTube channel, grow to your channel, and it will create awareness? I've reached out to them. They're a big channel. I'm sure people reach out to them all the time, but hopefully I have reached out to them to collaborate. Maybe someday it'll happen. The video that I just put above your comment, which is this video, is the one that I reached out to them in the past about. And Than, who's one of the people on that channel, has expressed enthusiasm for it. All right, getting back to what you're saying, Human. We've not talked about that a lot on this channel, and I have a few things to say about it. But I like to parse out two different questions because I think you're raising several objections. So the hell objection, I actually feel like I can deal with fairly succinctly because, like I've said, I think a neutral scholarly reading of the relevant scriptural resources yields the conclusion that hell is not a place of eternal conscious torment. Now, I don't know what happens to us after we die, and I'm glad that I don't know. If I see God after I'm dead and God's like, you weren't good enough, I have to erase your soul from existence, I kind of personally trust that decision. And even if I'm the one who gets erased, even if I go to the place of annihilation, I feel like my perspective to God, my answer to that decision would be, look, you gave me life. I appreciated it in this world. You've surrounded me with a lot of beauty. And I wouldn't, and I would be grateful for that. So I don't know that that's a defeater for me. So I think that's the easiest to deal with. So that's what I kind of discussed first. But what do you think about that? And let me tell you that I know that this is very hotly debated in Christian circles. And I also know that Christian fundamentalism holds to this idea that hell is a place of unimaginable, intense suffering. And I'll just tell you, when I was about 9 years old, I became an atheist from a different theology, one that is much more austere. And that's what drove me to atheism, was there's no way God could ever do that to people. So I understand where you're coming from for sure. Any thoughts on that, or any reflections, resonances?
I guess if that's like, you would personally be okay with it, then like I guess like sure, like yeah. But I don't know. I guess for the people who are in heaven forever, they have free will, but they cannot sin, and there will be no evil.
Well, here's the way I sort of think about that. So, I don't actually believe in free will. I think moral agency is maybe a better way to describe what we have, right? Because I can't will myself to believe something that I don't believe, So I am ultimately an imperfect arbiter of my own thoughts. I'm an imperfect, I can't prescribe myself to think something and then think that. Let me just give a shout out to On Day 3, really fantastic channel. If you haven't checked him out, please check him out. Big shout out to Dr. Kurt. I put your comment up there, but Dr. Kurt and I have a conversation coming up on mega bloodbath debates, and I'm really not looking forward to that because he is going to whoop me pretty good. But yeah. Anyways, I guess getting back to your question, that doesn't really move the needle for me in terms of the hell issue or what happens after we pass on. But to me, I sort of define morality and immorality as harmony versus disharmony with all things and all sensations in the universe. So the way I think of it is this: you know, in hell will in heaven will be in a place where, I don't know, hopefully there's maybe some more alignment. I don't know that I will be monolithic in heaven. Like, I don't know that I'll be like a person and I'll be like, hello, it's me still, my name is Tavo. And I've
Mm.
had this conversation with Christians, and I don't even think there's anything in the Bible that says that souls are atomic, meaning that souls can't be divided into smaller portions. So but I do think that, but I do think it's not that you lose free will or you have no ability to do what you want, but it's probably more like you're more aligned with universal harmony and the harmony of all the consciousness around you.
Mm.
That's kind of the way I see it. Now, in terms of, is it sad when people, don't make it to heaven? Yeah, I think it's sad. But like I said, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't know that God is going to let me into heaven, if there is such a thing as heaven. I don't even know that there is. And if there is, let me clarify that I'm certain that it's not the way we think of it.
Mm.
But I really very, very confidently believe that when I die, God's going to be like, you were way too bad. There's no way you're getting into heaven. I know that's not like sort of a really Christian thing to say, but I also would, if that happens, I would say, you gave me life, and I'm grateful for that. Every time I walk around at night and take a breath of fresh air, that's a pleasant thing that you gave me that I wouldn't have experienced otherwise. I don't know. Let me turn it back to you. I've said some stuff. So what do you think about that stuff? Any topics on hell or death or post death suffering that I haven't talked about yet?
Um, I'm sorry. I started thinking of another point because I think I forgot how you worded it, but like this doesn't turn the needle for you, and I think that's super valid. I guess that is kind of a poor first topic because I mean we don't know a lot about hell and heaven, so discussion on it really shouldn't be a faith changing thing. Could I bring up another topic if that's okay?
Oh, sure, sure, sure. Yeah. And we haven't talked about the other things that you brought up, the problem of evil, the problem of suffering. Those are other things that we can talk about. One last thought that I'll leave you with. Every time, oh, thanks very much. LA Apologetics is one of our moderators and a really fantastic individual. So thank you very much, LA Apologetics, for being here as well. One thought that I'll just leave you with: every time we exercise, that feels good, right? And over the long run, by exercising, we grow more muscle, right? But every time we exercise, we lose cells in our body. We lose inflammatory cells to apoptosis. We lose some muscle cells to apoptosis. So every time we exert ourselves, we're making our body healthier, but that's not necessarily a good thing for each and every cell. So the way I kind of think about our soul and our soul in relationship to God and relationship to the universe, and again using very, very highly Christological terms, the way I think of this is, is in a similar way. In other words, maybe there's suffering for us as individuals, but that contributes to a more healthful state for the whole. Or maybe if I die and just get erased from existence, maybe I'm like that one muscle cell that has to undergo apoptosis so that the entirety of the whole can be in a better, more healthy state. Just something to think about. I don't know if that totally dispels all your considerations there, but you said you wanted to talk about something else, so happy to change the topic.
Sure. With that though, I could maybe feel a little bit compelled by that, or pretty compelled by that, if the God in question was not all powerful. Because if like the God we're considering is all powerful, then I don't believe there would be a need for the loss of some stuff or for the suffering of things, because that almost kind of sounds like God allowing evil, allowing suffering to make himself. I guess you're not talking about himself, but to make the population of the conscious creatures he's enjoying community with better. And it's like he could just, if he was all powerful, could just make them at that end state to begin with, without the suffering.
Yeah, certainly. LA Apologetics says hit the like. Definitely good advice. If you haven't already, click the like button on this video. If you haven't already, please click, go by our channel and sub. I'd really appreciate that. But Oh, wow. Oh, that's nice. Dr. Kurt, that's really nice of you. Look, if you're in the chat, Tavo only needs 21 more subs to hit the 800 mark. Be kind, hit sub. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. All right, so let's get back to now we're switching gears and we're talking about the problem of suffering, which I agree, that's a very compelling problem. And I don't have any good answers to it. I just have some things that you could think about. Okay. One thing that you can think about is, do you know who Robert Nozick is? He wrote one of my favorite books when I was a kid. It was called Anarchy, State, and Utopia. And I think I read it when I was 11 or 12. Somebody gave it to me and I was like, oh, this is the stuff right here. Do you know who that is?
No, I'm unfamiliar.
Okay. Well, you don't have to read the whole book. It's a fun book if you ever get around to reading it. But he's got this thought project called the Experience Machine, right? And it's, basically it's if you had the option to like go into this experience machine and experience like 15 minutes of pure pleasure, would you do it? And there's a lot of versions of this thought experiment. Like if you could just go into that experience machine, plug into it, and just be happy for the rest of your life, is that something that you would do? And almost everybody, when you ask the question, says no. And I think of the reason why they say no as something that's very hard to describe, but I call it the qualia of authenticity, right? So humans do seem to value that qualia of authenticity. Let me give you another example that brings it to like a more realistic plane. I was diagnosed with a terminal malignancy, and I experienced in that journey physically one of the most unpleasant things that I've ever experienced in my life. It was really horrific, and it was very painful. And and honestly, like in that moment, I didn't. There was almost nothing that I wouldn't give to end that suffering. Okay, it was really bad. But now in retrospect, I really am glad that I went through that. And I've asked this to people in other ways. If you could, what's the worst relationship you've had? What's the worst heartbreak? And people are always like, oh, it was terrible. I really felt terrible. And I went through the situation. And I said, if I gave you a magic wand and you could erase that period from your life, would you do it? And almost everyone says no. So, in some ways, there's two different questions that are happening here. Number one is, why is there pain in the world? Why do we live in a world of pain and suffering? Okay, that's a very good question. It's a very persuasive question. Now, there's a separate question, which is, does the presence of pain and suffering in our experience make it less likely that there's a God? Now, I think we conflate those two questions too much. But yeah, it's a hard one. I can give you some stuff to think about. One more thing that I'll give you to think about. Humans don't really understand pleasure or suffering very well. There's a really famous researcher named Philip Brickman. He was in his 40s, great researcher. He was one of the world's experts and a very, very young, a very promising up and coming academician in the field of studying the happiness of people. Now he did some research, and I'm going to overstate some of his research. So if I'm misquoting anything, you can correct me in the chat or just look into yourself. But he's a really fascinating individual. Sadly, this person who was one of the leading experts on happiness in the world, okay, took his own life. That in and of itself is a really ironic turn to this story. But some of the fascinating stuff that he researched was, and I'll ask you this as a question, would you rather win the lottery or would you rather lose a limb?
Win the lottery, right?
Yeah, most people would say, I would rather win the lottery. Well, what's fascinating is what his research showed is that basically 3 to 6 months after you win the lottery or 3 to 6 months after you lose a limb, your happiness essentially equilibrates, So I would just invite you to think about the fact that humans are very, very bad at perceiving what makes us happy and understanding what it actually means to be happy. Fulfillment is a very, very challenging prospect, And if I don't know that if you made me God and you said, here's your magic wand, use it to make somebody happier. This is a wand that can change anyone's state of mind and can change anyone's circumstance in their life. Use it to make somebody happier. I don't know what I could do with that wand. So I think saying God should make sure that there's less suffering in the world. God should make us happier. God should do more to improve our quality. I think those are all very, very challenging things once you try to operationalize those ideas. And I'll leave you with one more thought experiment. I go into a lot of this detail in my book. One more thought experiment. Let's say I was friends with God, and let's say I had lunch with God on a weekly basis. Okay. And, I say, God, look at this bell curve of human suffering, and look at this lower end of the bell curve. Look how much these people are suffering. Okay. And I could point to like childhood malignancies, or really, trigeminal neuralgia, like things that cause a lot of pain. Like these are entities that cause people to like kill themselves. They're in so much pain. It's really terrible stuff, right? So I say, God, get rid of this stuff. And God says, you know what, Tavo, you're very persuasive. I've subbed to you on YouTube. I like all your videos. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to get rid of that pain and suffering. Well, here's the problem. The very next week, and certainly months and years after that, human suffering will have just sort of re-equilibrated. Okay. So eventually, what will seem odious and horrific generations later will just be the lower end of the bell curve. So now I'm going to go to God again, and I'm going to say, look, you got rid of that bad stuff, but look, now there's this other stuff that's so terrible that you've got to admit, you got to get rid of this. It's just so horrific for people to go through. And God says, okay, you know what? I'm gonna agree with you. I'll get rid of that. Eventually, the spectrum of human experience is going to be so narrow that we'll all be kind of stuck in the simulation where an artificial superintelligence has taken us over and has plugged us into happiness machines. So I would just invite you to say, my perspective on human suffering is informed by epistemic humility and calibrated uncertainty. I don't know what makes people happy. I don't know what a good life is. I don't know what a fulfilled life is. And I think those are hard questions. And I don't think religion gives us perfect answers to that, no matter what religion we're in. And one last thought experiment. I promise it's the last one. After I was diagnosed with terminal malignancy, they sent me home to die, right? I was on hospice. A few weeks later, it was clear that I wasn't dying, and I got better, right? And so I saw my doctor, and he's like, you're probably not going to die now. This was like weeks to months later at this point. And I was like, I'm bummed out. I'm disappointed, So why was it that I was disappointed? Well, I came to realize something. If you take 100 people and you tell that 100 people, you're going to die in 2 months, and then you come over to them 2 months later, okay, and you say, all right, now this is the end of your time. This is the end of your 2 months. Are you at peace with the fact that you're going to die? I would bet you that 98% of people will say, you know what, if it's my time, I'm at peace with it. I'll be fine with that. Now, if you take 100 people and you say you're going to live for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, however long, and then at the halfway point, you come back to them and you say, are you at peace with the way you're living your life? I bet you maybe 20, 30% of the people will say that they're at peace with that. So I think that's interesting. It's harder to face life than it is to face death in some regards, because we don't know what we're supposed to do here. So, there's a lot of uncertainty. And anyways, I don't know if I'm just giving you stuff to think about in terms of the problem of pain and suffering. I'm not giving you any easy answers, but what do you think about that stuff?
Sure. I do think, like, the question with, like, would you experience the 15 minutes of bliss, what you said about that, and what you said about would you magic wand away your worst relationship? I do think the response that you said a lot of people have is valid and is true. But I think, and then when you view it through the lens of being like, okay, like if you already believe in God, like that's the, I'm so sorry for not speaking clearly, but if you look at the world we're in right now, and then you consider God, and then you say, I don't want God to just magic wand away our stuff, like the bad things in life. I think that's fair. And I think, like, okay, sure, yes. But if we're considering, like, I like the way that Alex O'Connor will word it, where it's like, if you consider the world that we're in, does the idea that an all good and all loving God made it in the first place, like he set up the scene, is that what you would expect? What we see around us is that what makes the most sense? Because sure, right now, if you look at the scene that we're in, like the way that people, because I believe, like we can all see the pain and suffering that we go through right now in our lives. A lot of people don't deserve it, and a lot of people don't get better from it. Like certain children, and someone in your position, which I'm obviously so happy that you got better. congratulations. I know it was a long time ago, but it's very incredible that you did. Some people don't; they just die. Um, where was I going with that? My bad.
I mean, yeah, I guess my point is this. I don't know that I would expect this world to be less filled with pain if there is a God versus if there isn't. In other words, I don't know that I think that the presence of pain in this world means that there is no God. In other words, I could see God saying, I'm going to create a universe where people have a breadth of human experiences. Now, I think I understand what you're saying. It's easy to like say, well, I had pain and I'm doing okay now, and it's harder to do that if you're looking at other people's suffering, right? Like, what about a child who has cancer who knows nothing else other than extreme pain and then just finally dies at the end of that? I don't have a good answer to that, right? I think I think that we can talk about pain and suffering in ways that are intellectual. And if we talk about it, and I've said this to atheists before, by the way, I say, if your argument is look at this horrific thing in this world, look at this example of pain and suffering, you know, how do you allow that? How could God look at that and say, I'm okay with it? I think on an emotional level, it's almost impossible to do that for humans, right? I'll always lose the debate every time. I think you can talk about the presence of pain in this world in an intellectual perspective, and that's easier to do. If you talk about the pain as just being, it's terrible that children are suffering. Now, I'll say just one last thing on that topic. Having been around kids who have terminal diagnoses, I would go home crying every night. And keep in mind, I'm like, most of what I do is academic and administrative, so I don't like taking care of people. I find that I'm too sensitive to do it, to be honest. But I would go home crying every night because not only because it was hard to see kids in pain, but because I would see examples of such poignant beauty. You just see people who love each other so much in that setting, and and that doesn't make it worthwhile. In other words, it's not counterbalanced by people who love each other. But all I can say is, for my own subjective experience, I'm glad that I had those moments of pain, and I can say that I feel like when humans really flourish, when we exhibit moments of true beauty, that's sometimes in the face of our darkest moments of our suffering. Now, I don't know if that helps. That's just something to think about. And by the way, this especially is not helpful if you're in pain, if you're suffering. And I've had conversations with people where they're just like, hey, I don't understand the problem of pain, and I want to talk about this. And I'm like, it's clear to me that you're suffering, and I feel like this is not the right time to tackle this for you. This is the right time for me to say, stop. How can I be supportive to you as a human being? That doesn't help at all, but
No, you're good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Shall we move on to a different topic?
Sure. Let's add faith from facts to the conversation. So now we've got 2 Christians and 2 atheists. Yeah.
Hey, how y'all doing? Can you hear me good?
Yeah.
Hi, faith from facts. What's your name again? Can you refresh my memory of your first name?
So it's Faith from Facts is it. I don't think I've given out my real name, but it's a long
Oh, you don't have to then. You don't have to also, yeah. Thanks very much for LA Apologetics for the kind words. And I don't know what On Day 3 and Dr. Kurt are talking about, but On Day 3 is On Day 3 and Dr. Kurt are probably 2 of the top 5 or 6 smartest people that I've interacted with on YouTube. They're both way smarter than I am. So if you ever had the chance to talk with them, I would highly recommend it. The 2 of you, On Day 3 and Dr. Kurt, if you have the chance to talk to each other, I would also recommend that too. And I'm happy to put you in touch with each other via email. Like, I don't want like giving out people's email addresses to other people without consent. But if you want that, I'm happy to hook you up to each other. All right. Yeah, go ahead, Faith.
Yeah. So yeah, faith is just generally how I'm kind of referred to, But I'm Faith from Facts because like I take a very evidentialist kind of approach to things,
Yeah. Have you seen my CTF argument?
I've seen it. I think I saw when you kind of did the interview about it. Like I think it was last
yeah.
ago. And so yeah, I've seen it, and I'm a little bit more up to date on it than I was last time.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I put it in the comment section again. My most complete version of the CTF argument. It's in the comment section. Dr. Kurt's written something like 10 articles about it, probably more than that. So,
Yeah.
anyways, if you want to check that out, but go on. We're ready to hear from you, Faith.
Yeah, it really is a really good argument, and it's definitely the type of thing that I enjoy. So, I think that when it comes to stuff like suffering, which is kind of what we were discussing, and how do we put this into the discourse, I think that there's an emotional component to suffering that can make discussing it hard, even if you know intellectually you need to kind of have this distance from it in order to get the best understanding of how pain and suffering impacts things like God. Does that make sense?
Do you want to keep talking for a second, because I want to pull up a resource too?
Yeah, no worries. So
and human, you can chime in as well.
So for me, I think that I tend to be a little bit more of taking an intellectual approach to pain, to the amount that's kind of detrimental when I run into people who are actually in pain. Like I'll talk about, okay, well, what if somebody loses a child, and here's the implications. But then when somebody actually has lost a child, I'm like, yeah, I don't know what to say, because one of the things on theism is that I think a lot of atheists treat kind of death as final, whereas on many varieties of theism, not just Christianity, we go on in some manner, whether it is by reincarnation or through living with Jesus in heaven type thing.
Well, that's a good point. And I've not given I've not given you any of the more Christological answers.
Mhm.
OD3 has a really good handout that he sent me, and I just started reading it last night, but it's really fantastic. And it addresses some of the problems of theodicy. But John Lennox, for instance, is somebody who talks a lot about the problem of pain and suffering. And he's like, basically, if we live in a world of pain and suffering, doesn't it make sense that we would have a theology that's informed by a theological or divine understanding of pain and suffering, not just through the lens of intellect and omniscience, but through the lens of human experience? And that does make the example of Jesus very persuasive. Now, we've not talked about any of the other Christological implications to your question, and I haven't gone into them just because just to be brief, but there's a lot of other stuff. In human, there's like I could talk to you about for hours and hours on the problem of pain and suffering, and we would both leave from a fun conversation. I think we'd both like it, but it wouldn't be. None of this is easy answers, I think, but I do think that there's some persuasiveness in, out of all the theologies of the world, I think Christianity has the best lens on engaging with the problem of pain and suffering, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to remember that within Christianity, when God came to earth, he came to a poor migrant worker family in the most violent province of the Roman Empire. He was not, this king type figure detached from the everyday people. He was somebody who lived in kind of the slums of the society at the time. And the whole plan that he had, as far as we can tell, seems to be, hey, I'm going to get crucified at some point, and I think that really does deeply inform a Christian view of suffering.
Now, quick homework that I'm going to do, and then we'll go back to the panel. But is this a Christian channel? I think in general, like we're sort of Christian aligned, apologetical leaning. But this is a conversation that's very atheist friendly, and we've got two atheists on the panel, and we've got two people who I assume are more Christian leaning on the panel. So that's just a brief answer to your question. If you check out the content, I sort of like talk about a lot of different things on the channel, but if you Dr. Kurt says I'm not a doctrinaire Christian. I think that's an interesting perspective, an interesting phrasing of that. But I hope that answers your question, X of Christ. But I'm glad you're here. I hope you'll check out some of our content. And but I do sort of like have a slightly idiosyncratic perspective, but I wouldn't say that it's necessarily radical or heretical. So I think it's within the parameters of Christianity, but it's informed by years of looking into these issues from a non-Christian lens. Faith from facts is probably from a more Christological lens. And I hope you guys saw it. I highlighted this comment from LA Apologetics. Christianity doesn't ignore suffering. It teaches that suffering entered the world through sin and that God stepped into our suffering through Jesus. The cross is God's answer to pain, not by staying distant from it, but by bearing it himself. That's a really nice phraseology, LA. You should turn that into a meme or an image. And if you ever send that to me, I'll put it up on my Instagram. I think it's a great quote. Yeah.
So my perspective is that, your channel's Christian, but it's more data than it is Christian, if that makes sense.
I mean, I kind of take that as a compliment. I don't talk about theodicy in any of my videos, but I wrote a whole book about it. And I think the problem of pain, the problem of evil, the problem of suffering are very persuasive. They're persuasive from an intellectual lens. They're persuasive from a humanistic experiential lens. So you're asking probably the hardest question, and you're asking one that I haven't had the chance to talk about on this channel before, Human. So I really appreciate it. Now, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but do I believe in God? So here's my belief system. I'm a lifelong atheist. I'm currently not theologically committed, but I'm more certain than not that there is a God. But here's what I'm even more certain of, and this I would say with a very high degree of certainty. If there's any religion that's true, then it's Christianity. And that's the basis of the CTF argument, which we've talked about and circled back to a couple of times in this very conversation. But the CTF argument, which again, I'll put in the chat really quick, is my argument that basically, if there's any religion that's true, it's Christianity. So, and that's a terse distillation of a very long argument that has 13 different sub-criteria. But I hope you'll ask more questions. And X of Christ says, he's a Christian. Yeah, so I think you'll find this to be sort of a very intellectually engaged channel, but we have a lot of conversations with atheists. Yeah. Okay, great. Let's go back to the panel. And Max, I haven't brought you into the discussion yet, but do you want to say anything on the problem of suffering?
No, I don't think I have anything to add beyond what the people have already said, to be honest, on that topic.
Well, Human, I'm kind of letting you drive this. So, do you want to ask other questions? And we've got other topics that we've had on the screen briefly, and we can.
Sure. Yes. Okay. With Christianity, how do you square with the atrocities in the Old Testament? Because I have heard some people say it's more like, for example, I'm not sure which book it is, but where the Israelites came to conquer a land, they drove out the warriors. They chased the warriors into the wilderness, killed them. Then they returned and killed the women, the children, and the cattle and the infants. I know some people interpret that more metaphorically or just more as a story. But even with that view, because I know most people don't view it that way, most people view it as historical fact. Even with that view, if it's divinely inspired literature, then I don't like the guy. I don't like this God who would write this story and say, this is how I, even if it's hypothetical, or if it was historical fact, this is how he governs his people. I don't like that. And even if he was real, I would not like the guy, because I think those are evil, awful things. I think it's never justified to kill infants. I think that you shouldn't kill civilians, but infants, you can't even say it's oh, they had a bad culture and they had to get rid of the culture because they would have kept spreading. The infants, that's not true for them. And also the animals either. And then some people say it was hyperbole, but then I believe it was King Saul who left, I think, some of the cattle alive, and I think maybe the king, and he got in trouble for that. He lost his anointing for just keeping that alive, which means they did do the rest of the commandments, the rest of that command, and I don't like, to me, I dislike that very strongly.
Yeah, I mean, I will give you an answer, but I'm going to start by telling you more about myself, and it's going to be, again, personal anecdote. This may not help you, but by the way, I wanted to say X of Christ. That sounds like a really fascinating story, this comment that I have on the screen from you. I would love to learn more about this. And if you want to pop up later,
sounds
the
interesting.
link to join the conversation is in the chat. So, but I don't want to like step on human, but I hope I hear more about this journey. And if not today, now, then the next time we live stream, and we do live stream every Monday at 5 p.m. PST. And you're also welcome to just email me if you can't make those, and we'll just have a live stream where we chat. I'm happy to do that. I've got a chat coming up. Max, we're talking tomorrow at like 5 o'clock, right? So.
Oh yeah, I don't need to actually be in this panel if I'm going to be here tomorrow, but I just
No.
sometimes
I love having you here, and that's not
Yeah.
that's not saying go away. It's just
Yeah.
I was like, I just was pointing out that I do conversations that are like one-offs and just
Yeah, if you want to set it up with one of these other people too, they'll know you do one-off.
Yeah. And the most important reason why I brought that up, Max, is because it gave me an opportunity to weasel out of the question that Human just asked me. And that's really the most important thing. Weaseling out of stuff. Okay. All right. Yeah. Let me tell you my own personal, Dr. Kurt. Yes, I do conversations. Yes. Most of our conversations, Dr. Kurt, in real time have been do conversations, unfortunately, on my end, not yours. All right. So let me just be honest with you. When I got to know the New Testament and the Old Testament, it was through the lens of atheism. Okay. So I actually knew more about the atrocities than I knew about the rest of the Old Testament. Right. And I honestly, it was very hard to justify that. And I started reading the New Testament. And as I came around to believing from a very neutral and a really agnostic perspective, and this was a slow journey that I'm very tersely summarizing. I'll just be honest with you, Human. I was like, I'll take the New Testament and I'll just ignore the Old Testament. Right. And there are certainly Christians who do that. And there's certainly sort of red letter Christians where they're like, I only take the teachings of Jesus and that's it. Now, I know that's not a very intellectually satisfying answer. So I'm just going to say that I was initially sort of very much moved to say the Old Testament, just reject it, just throw it away. I've sort of softened on that, but I'm just being very, very confessional with you, Human. I'm just telling you what my true beliefs are on some of this stuff. But now, honestly, this was a hard stumbling block for me, and it was a hard stopping point. And I don't know that I've surmounted it. Okay, but I will tell you what resolutions I have in mind. Okay, so there is this thing about King Saul and him keeping some of the Amalekite, the king and some of the resources. I want to underscore that what he got in trouble for was not that he showed mercy, that he didn't kill some of the things, right? It's that he took some of the Amalekite resources, the king and, some of their treasures and some of their resources and some of their cattle, and said, I'm going to keep this for myself, right? Now, he got in trouble because, that was essentially disobeying God and keeping resources for yourself. Okay, so that's at least a contextual, thing that is important to keep in mind. It's a contextual feature. Now, that doesn't totally mitigate the issue, but it's just one thing to keep in mind that changes, I think, complexion ever so slightly. Now, Origen wrote a lot about this too. And his point with the whole story is we have to take this as an allegory, and we have to take everything in the Old Testament and use Jesus as a hermeneutical key for it, right? So when we look at the destruction of the Amalekites, the key point that we're looking at there is basically that you can't confront evilness and keep a little of that evilness for yourself. And that was the lesson that Origen took away. Now, again, that's not fully satisfying to me, okay, but it changes the complexion maybe ever so slightly. I'll give you one other insight. I went on Reddit recently and I said, tell me the things about the Bible that you think are the most objectionable, okay? And I had about something like 300 comments. It was a lot of comments, okay? Now, when I added up, I tallied all of the words that people brought up in the relevant passages. And if somebody said this passage bothers me, then I took the whole passage and I added up all the words in that passage. If you get rid of all that stuff, then you're still left with 99 point. It was something like 99. It was not even 0.1% of what the Bible says. So if you take out everything that is objectionable, even being very liberal with your definition, you're still left with 99.9% of the book staying intact. Now, my point with that is this. If I mean, I read, I used to like sort of like you reading Shakespeare and other stuff, but if you read like any great work, Void or Discovery, Crime and Punishment, or War and Peace, you can find stuff that is literarily sloppy, that's poorly written, that is objectionable. Now, I don't, we don't take things that way, right? We make our decisions based on 99.9% of the work. I think the Bible is the only thing where we do draw a hard line and say it has to be 100% not objectionable for me to follow it. And I don't think that, and I understand the justification for that line, okay? And I understand it completely. It's because if this is supposed to be the word of God, then there should be nothing in it that is objectionable. Okay, and I understand what you're saying about that. But I wonder if that standard of every single word has to be something that I approve of, if that's really the best standard. Now, the last two things I'll say, one is, what does Jesus say? He says, take all the laws of Moses, you can distill them all to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? So I think that that's a pretty good terse distillation of the whole thing, and that's pretty unimpugnable. And when I look at the teachings of Jesus, I find them to be largely unimpugnable. Now, the very last thing that I want to say is, it is impossible to disarticulate the Old Testament from the very brutal time in which it was written. Now, we do know that cries for erasure and eradication of a culture, I won't use the G word because apparently that's a word that YouTube doesn't like, but that's kind of hyperbolic language. We know that wasn't, that wasn't meant to be literal. It was meant to be hyperbolic. Again, that's not totally satisfying to me, but that it's a reality. We also know that some figures who were themselves Amalekites show up later. So we know that this was not a complete eradication of the Amalekites. Now, I don't know if any of this is satisfying to you, but at least that took me part of the way towards at least being a little bit different on where I am with some of the stuff. But look, the Old Testament was written in a brutal time. The context is brutal, and it records history of the Israelites surviving in very brutal times. And if we didn't have that history of the Israelites, I think we would be poorer for it, and we wouldn't understand Jesus as well as we do. And let me give you just one example of that, and then I'll stop talking and I'll turn it over to other people. But my last example that I want to bring up is there's about 6 centuries, about 8 different leaders, 8 different regimes who tried to completely eradicate Judaism, remove it from the face of the earth, and get rid of Judaism entirely. Now, I find it very fascinating that when Judaism did change, when it did succumb, percentage-wise, when quite a large portion of the religiously engaged population left Judaism, maybe the biggest en masse departure of the religious population from core Judaism, it was not from an army, it was not from a king, it was towards the teachings of Jesus. Now, I find that to be at least very interesting, and we wouldn't have that historical insight if we didn't understand the fact that the Jews were extremely, extremely refractory to any conversion attempts from any other king, and they were living in a very brutal time, and they were living under the regime of several external leaderships that wanted to erase them from existence. So again, I don't know if any of that's totally satisfying to you. I wouldn't expect it to be, but those are the best resolutions that I have. Faith from Facts, what do you say?
So basically, there's one question that I kind of have for human that I've been kind of turning over in my head. And it's this, okay? If God exists, he's not just the God of individuals, he's the God who works on nation levels, okay? And it seems to me that God, it's appropriate for God to bring judgment to nations, right? If he's the good judge over them. Now, my question for human then is it okay for God to bring justice to a country through warfare?
Through warfare. I'm not too exactly sure. I suppose you could say that's situational. For me personally, though, also I'm not too familiar with war in general, but for me personally, I don't find it defendable to kill infants and women, or like non-combatants in general, but like especially infants. because I don't think that an infant deserves that. Even if you say, I mean, not you, but like even if someone says their culture, like I would not feel comfortable killing a 9-year-old if they were just super sinful. Apparently, to me, that's wrong, no matter what.
Well, I just want to point out, human, that like I don't think any Christians would take any of this as prescriptive. In other words, if you walked up to a Christian, you said that person's descended from an Amalekite, I don't think there's any Christian in the world that would kill that person. I shouldn't say there's no Christian in the world. There probably are a bunch, but almost every Christian would be like, wait, that's not what the point of this is.
For sure. But also, like, it is written that is what they did. And even if one was to say like, oh, it was hyperbolic, or it's like symbolic, like the Amalekites were evil, and God does, you can't just keep a little bit of evil. Oh, also, I'm sorry, this is you mentioned that Saul kept it for himself. If I remember, I might be a little bit off. I believe he burned a lot of it as offering to God, but he still disobeyed God, and that was a problem. He disobeyed God's commandment. But also God commanded those actions, and you said that in the time of the Israelites, it was a very brutal time. So this like crazy fighting is to be expected, to be seen there, right? But God's morality, God's character is not shaped by society, is not shaped by the time that he's choosing to operate in. So he shouldn't be fluctuating and dependent on the time. The behavior of the Israelites, sure, but this specifically was commanded by God. And I'm sorry. Oh yes. Wait, I'm sorry, really quick. I heard someone, and I don't believe they're an archaeologist, but they're an ancient Hebrew scholar, and they reference a lot of archaeologists. And in the time that the Old Testament was written, he says, this is not y'all's view, I assume, and that's perfectly okay, but he says the empirical evidence that we have, I guess that's right, the physical things of the archaeology sites say that Yahweh used to be more of a war god, more of a war conqueror god, deity that was specific to the Israelites. And that makes more sense when reading the Old Testament, especially since their view of their deity changed as time went on, and it more aligned with what we see in the New Testament, which is more love and stuff. There was one more thing I was going to say, I don't remember. Oh, yes. To me, Gnosticism feels more compelling than Christianity, which Gnosticism is Christianity, but more specifically Gnosticism, that the God of the Old Testament was just an evil God, and Jesus and his messages are correct, but he is not aligned with the God of the Old Testament. To me, Gnosticism feels more compelling when you look at the Old Testament.
I'll be like, okay, so there's a few comments in the chat that I want to acknowledge. One of them is that, people are pointing out that, this was a very, very evil populace that was killing their own children. I think that's a reasonable point out. Somebody else pointed out that we actually do have some debate in the historical literature about which parts of the Torah were canonical that Jesus was teaching from. Okay. The canonical Torah was, I think, established. I don't remember the dates. I think it was some centuries after Jesus, right? So there was the birth of Judaism is, there's sort of a rabbinical Judaism that was birthed in the year 150. And then there was a big conference among the Jews that decided what Old Testament is canon, what isn't. So whenever we go through this stuff and somebody says, what about this one part of the Old Testament? I always say, do we know that that was part of the canon when Jesus existed? Now, I will say that for this passage about the Amalekites, that we do have some understanding that that was part of what we have. Now, the other thing that I just want to say is, I'm not sure that Judaism would have survived if there hadn't been sort of this militant perspective on what the Jews were suffering and the reality of the threats that they were surrounded by. So I understand the temptation to say, well, let's just stick with Jesus and throw everything else out. I think the problem with that is I do think there are parts, personally, I think there are parts of the Old Testament scriptures that point forward toward Jesus. So, yeah. But I also want to just leave you with one more thought, human, which is I've read all the Gnostic Gospels and I've read the fragments of the parts that are very fragmentary. I don't find them to be like super illuminating from a historical perspective, but I think they have nice things to say. Like, I don't think that, I think there's stuff in there that doesn't make any sense, and there's stuff that it doesn't seem historical to me, and there's stuff that seems like very much this is later legendary inflation. But I think that I don't discourage from people from reading the Gnostic Gospels. I think if you're all about Jesus and you want to read the Gnostic Gospels, I think that's an additional lens. I think it's just sort of a less reliable lens. So I don't know if that really helps
Yeah.
in any direction. But
Sure. A bit ago, you said the Amalekites were like super evil, correct?
that's one thing that people bring up in the chat. There was a lot of the surrounding cultures of that time would have swallowed up the Jews if the Bible weren't. I think if the Jews ought to have been swallowed up by the events of history and by their surrounding enemies. To be honest, all things being equal, that's probably what would have likely happened. By the way, just quickly, Ellie Apologetics has said this a few times, but feel free to click the like button on this video. That does help us out since we're a very small channel. And please go to my channel and sub if you're getting something out of this. We're touching on some really heavy topics here. So, all right, go ahead, Human.
Oh yes. So, well, I guess you didn't say it, but to the people commenting, like they were really bad. It's like those are infants. Like they killed infants, they killed children, they killed non-combatants. To me, you can't someone cannot make the argument, but they were really bad in this situation because they also killed animals. They killed a bunch of animals. I don't think their animals were evil and teaching people to kill people and their children. So it's like, sure, the adults you can murder them, cleanse them out. I still feel like oof, but to me, it's still wrong to kill. You can't say they're really bad.
Yeah, so Human, I don't feel like you really answered my question, though. Given that God is not just a judge of individuals, he's a judge of nations, right? According to this kind of Christian biblical perspective. Is it okay for God to bring war upon a nation or allow war upon a nation that he has judged and found wanting?
What was the last word? I'm sorry.
Basically, that he's judged them, that he's rendered a judgment. This culture is going to go, and because of that, I'm going to bring war on them.
Right.
Is that fine?
Well, to me, it's just from my worldview. There just is no entity that does that. So it's difficult to say oh, it's right or wrong. But
so it's a counterfactual. I understand that you don't believe God exists, right?
Right. I'm just trying to say it's a little bit difficult for me
If
to kind of imagine.
we're going to criticize and kind of get into where is the Bible coming from with this, okay? I think that one very useful kind of counterfactual is if God does exist and he is a judge over nations, is it okay for him to use war to destroy a nation he's bringing judgment against? Does that make sense?
I believe again, okay, would most likely be situational, but even then, sure, I just know they're with the Babylonians. He just I don't know if he killed a lot of them, but he just he dispersed them. He got rid of that in a non-violent way. But even in this situation, it's okay, if they're awful people, and I don't know them obviously, but let's say it was justified to get rid of them. I still don't believe it's justified to kill infants and children.
So let's just assume for a second the answer is yes. It is fine for God to bring war on a people he's bringing judgment towards. Okay? If we accept that, the question is, how do we distinguish the Old Testament text from the other nearby ancient war rhetoric? That's basically just war, if that makes sense. And I think the answer is that we really can't. That when we take all of these things, it's their seed is no more. Well, except for the fact that the nation continued to exist and seems not to have changed at all, And so what happens is that you have this war rhetoric that is basically the same outside of Israelite culture and inside of Israelite culture. They use the same war rhetoric. And so I think that lowers our confidence that what was actually happening on the ground was anything more than basically regular war. Does that make sense?
To me, the fact that their writings are really similar to the writings of the people around them, it makes sense because to me, no divine entity there. They're just all writing scripture, I guess you would call it, like this. To me, it's not like it makes sense. But if you're seeing it from the fact that like there is a holy, all good, all powerful God that is consistent throughout all time, forever, always, it doesn't make sense that he would command the killing of infants and children, or that his scripture that is divinely inspired. I believe, I don't know. Do you feel that it's like the Bible is like kind of heavily influenced by the people who write it? Like it's like 70% the people and 30% God, or like?
So I don't think a percentage is really.
Just really quick before you answer that, let me do a little bit of homework, just really quick, because I want to give a shout out to some of the people who are in the chat and answer just a couple of quick questions. Antisocial social. I always mess that up, but anti. It's really great to see you, anti. Glad you're here. I hope we get to chat sometime too, because you've popped by a few times. Mega Bloodbath Debates, really great channel, says going to church, always a good idea. Going to church. Glad you advocate for going to church. Tacos. Good to see you. No, I'm just kidding. This person's a huge atheist, but check out their channel. I've got an appearance on their channel coming up, and it's a really fantastic channel. And I really recommend that we talked about echo chambers recently. Don't anyone live in an echo chamber. You should engage the opposition. I've had a couple of really great conversations, and Mega Bloodbath Debates is a great resource for people to have more conversations. And then somebody did ask, can I enter the conversation if I'm trying to find this comment. Oh, do you guys also debate / discuss people who are not atheists but also are not Christian? Yeah, sure. We happen to be, I think Human is bringing up some really great questions and we're having a nice conversation, but yeah, you don't have to be either an atheist or a Christian or a not Christian. Like I said, I'm theologically not committed myself, so I'm happy to have these, and I'm on a theological journey. And by the way, in case you didn't get this, we did start out the conversation talking about this, but I really value the fact that I'm in my position of discovery. I just feel like there's a whole universe of theological insight in front of me that I'm still learning about. And boy, I really wouldn't want it any other way. All right, I think we were on faith, or were we on human?
Yeah. So I was responding to Human's question, basically, kind of in what way and to what degree is the Bible inspired? If that makes sense, or it comes from God. And for me, what it means for something to be scripture is that it's God's public revelation of himself, right? But I think that there's this concept called providence, right? That it's not necessarily that a miracle happened, but that things seem to have just come together the way that they did. A good example of providence would be in the Exodus, right? What happens is that you have the parting of the Red Sea. And one of the things that I think is very interesting is that the parting of the Red Sea resembles what's called, I think it's a wind set down, right?
Yeah, wind set down effect. That's correct. Yeah, geologically, yeah.
And what that is a purely normal, natural event, right? It happens plenty of times without it being a miracle, right? But it happens to appear at the time and place that it's needed, if that makes sense. And that's what providence is. It's non-miraculous kind of provision of God for this thing to happen, or in this case, scripture to be created, right? And there's this, and one of the things I've noticed is that it's not that there's a very specific hard sort of canon. It's only very recently, like within the last 500 years, that we have this kind of idea of there is a list and it is extremely set into these 66 books, right? Like you have Orthodox with a different canon, you got the Ethiopian church with a different canon. And so rather than it being black and white, whether or not something is from God in this way, I think there's plenty of room for gray, right? That we're more or less certain, and it might speak to us a little bit more or less. Okay?
Just really quickly, where did my comment go? I think I might have missed it. I'm trying to highlight the comments that I see, but I might have missed it. I appreciate your, let me look back through the comments for Anti's comment. Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was just about to ask Human if that answered his question.
Human, let me leave you with one more thought before you answer that. Is these are issues that are difficult to wade through. If I read the Bible and I said, I understand everything in it, and I'm quite content with my understanding of it, and I'm done now, I can close the book and finish. I think I would say that would be a very uninteresting point of my life that I'd be at that point. So I just want you to I want to invite you to engage in at least some degree of just epistemic humility, and just saying, look, there's going to be unanswered questions. There's going to be things here that don't make sense to me. There's going to be things here that I don't entirely agree with. Because I think even if we give you the best Christian answers to these questions, I think you will still come away feeling like maybe they're mitigated a little bit, but maybe not completely resolved. And you'll probably still come away with questions. One of my favorite quotes from Origen is that there are things that are conundrums, that are paradoxes in the scriptures that we read. And that's an invitation for us to keep looking, to keep thinking, to know that those paradoxes are not yet resolved. So I just want to keep that in mind as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, go ahead, Human.
Okay, I'm sorry. Forgot what exactly I'm responding.
I blew your mind. I blew your mind with my wisdom.
I'm speechless.
My understanding of your question was that you were asking me about how these words are inspired by God and whatnot. I gave it an answer that said, I think that a lot of it is providence, God controlling kind of the very natural way things come about, right? And I was wondering if that answered your question.
Right. Not particularly, because in this case, God commanded something to happen.
Right.
And then,
right.
and I brought that point up because you had mentioned we shouldn't ignore the context
Right.
in which that was written. Like the Old Testament, the very war heavy parts of it are written just much like the people around them. And I'm so sorry, stumbling over my words. To me, that doesn't feel quite right if it's divinely inspired, because it shouldn't just be fitting the social norms. It should be consistent within itself.
So my perspective is that God was using for lack of a better word, the broader ancient Near East culture that everybody's kind of coming from, and communicating in their sort of war rhetoric method, if that makes sense. He's communicating and I feel like hyperbolically is one way to say it, but it's the word hyperbolically feels like too pat of an answer, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. To me, I don't, because I'm sorry, I haven't read the Old Testament in a while, but I feel like throughout a lot of scripture, a big point with God's covenant with the Israelites is that he's setting them apart from the culture around them. So saying that in this specific sense, God is just deciding to meet them where they're at, but in so many other parts of their lives, God calls them to be set apart, to be his holy people. Mm-hmm. That to me feels off.
So I think that one idea that's present kind of all the way through history is that God is not. Is that there's this progressiveness to God's revelation, if that makes sense. He's working with people where they at and saying, hey, we're going to take you not from step A to step Z, but from step A to step B to step C. And eventually we're going to get to Z. But right now we're in step A. Let's get to step B. If that makes sense.
Sure. I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound. Yes, I see that point. To me, not very compelling, since I can't remember a lot of them, but I know in the Old Testament there were so many laws. Of course, it wasn't just the 10 Commandments on the tablets. I think what was the number, like 613? Like, there's so many little laws that were so incredibly specific, and I can't see why it could have just been thrown in here like a clear law that was like, hey, all humans are equal, never do slavery. Slavery is never right. That couldn't have just been thrown in there. Or also just like, hey, don't kill infants. Could have just been thrown in with the 613 that were like super specific things that like we agree don't really matter, like mixing cloths.
Right.
Max, I haven't brought you into the conversation nearly enough. What anything you want to say? And by the way, Chris Lucas says they've got a really good argument about Jesus being Messiah, and it's based off Daniel 9. There is a link to join the chat, and we do have room for more people in the chat if you want to join the chat. But I would be happy with switching topics. We do have somebody who's joined the chat who I think we haven't heard from in the past. It's syncretic idealism. So I will add them to the stage, but I want to make sure we've gotten to the end of this. I do think there's more to say on this, but I'm happy to switch topics. Maybe what I should do, let me bring up syncretic idealism, and I'll just see if they want to add anything to the chat. And is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And Max, if you got anything to say,
I'm so sorry. I'm going to be right back.
All right, syncretic, you're on with us. We talked a little bit about theodicy. We talked a little bit about the problem of evil, about the problem of pain and suffering, about the problem of hell. What would you like to say, syncretic? Are you there? Can you hear us? Just a reminder: if you're looking for a debate and you join the chat and you don't say anything, that counts as a win for me. So technically, I've won in my discussion with you, syncretic.
Syncretic, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I think they don't realize that they're muted. Let's see if no, I can't mute because they've muted themselves. Well, that's okay. Syncretic, if you want to get your equipment working, that's fine. And by the way, that was a joke. Silence does not imply that you've lost the debate. Yeah. Although on day 3 says Tavo won. I would agree with that. I'm very much kidding. Very, very much joking. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, let's keep chatting, and I'm okay switching topics also. So Max, if you want to say anything, that'd be fine. If we want to switch topics, because I do think we've kind of reached. And Human, I would just say that I have answers. I have more to say, but yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I left for a second. I don't know if you heard me. I said I was going to be right back. My apologies. I was called away.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Hope you're okay.
No, I'm good. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's now. Here's how we started the conversation. We started with this topic. We're talking about echo chambers, and we were talking about the acrimoniousness of discourse. And I think this conversation has been. I know there's people who are on different sides of the theological spectrum in the chat, but I think this has been a really great counterexample of a discourse that's been not acrimonious but very engaging. I do have some other questions here that I could go through if you guys want more topics. But if anyone else has anything that you want to say, I'm happy to.
Actually, I did have a question I was interested in asking you, Tavo.
Oh, sure, Max, go ahead.
Have you ever seen an argument in favor of design that you thought was bad?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious. It seems like you always tell everybody who comes on here that all their ideas are great. I just want to make sure you are skeptical of something.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think most ideas for design are things that I don't agree with. I mean, I've said this before a bunch of times. I think that that you can look at the universe and you can ask 2 separate types of questions. You can ask how type questions. Those are mechanistic and they're about causation, or you can ask why type questions, and those are about purposefulness. And I think that how type questions are the domain of the sciences and should always be the domain of the sciences. It's okay to talk about God as you answer those questions, but I think treating God as a wrench in a machine or a cog in a system is always going to be flawed. So if we look at the universe and we say, here's things that don't work out, you know, without inserting something supernatural, so therefore let's insert something supernatural. I think that's always a flawed thing to do. Your how type questions should be answered through the sciences. I think it's really the why type questions that should be answered through a theological lens. So I almost think that when people say there's no way to do this without God, and therefore God must have done it, you're kind of making, I think, a pretty big category error. The other thing that I think is a problem of that way of thinking is that when you have that line of thinking, you're essentially saying, God, there is a God, I believe in God, and God did this thing, but wasn't smart enough to cover up God's own tracks, right? So I think that's a flawed argument to make. I think it's always better to say, God gives us the why, science gives us the how. Those questions can inform each other. They don't have to be totally separate, but they are sort of in different categories of thinking. I don't know if that really answers your question, but yeah.
I mean, I think I kind of get the distinction you're making here. I was just curious about your thought process on that, but I think it makes some kind of sense.
Yeah, my thought process is that, you know, I think we're kind of reaching an inflection point in our theological discourse where we are saying, let's move away from the how type questions of the universe and keep answering those questions with science, and move towards answering the why type questions from the lens of theology.
Mm.
So
do you think finding patterns in random numbers is also a good argument for design? Because I think you had said, like you had previously, I don't want to give attention to a specific person, but you had said an argument was good in a previous stream, and it was related to finding patterns in pi.
Okay, I have been accused of being excessively affirming of lots of different arguments. So I probably said something. Let's bring Chronicle to the stage. I probably said something that you're indicting and impugning. But look, I mean, I think you're talking about James, who was like came on here and you're a huge fraud and stuff, right?
Yeah, he said that while you were actually saying the argument was good. He still thought you were a fraud.
Yeah, I mean, he's made several videos about me being a fraud. I actually think that this is a real problem that we have in religious discourse, and it gets actually to the slide that I have on the screen right now, so I'll just say something about it really quick. I think when we call people frauds or you know, grifters, that's an argument that can be thrown against almost anyone who is theistic leaning or apologetic leaning. So I always caution people against using that label unless they know it's justified. I'm happy to talk about this a little bit because, you know, a few videos have surfaced which have said that I'm a fraud. So I think they're all from James, but a lot of people have said that in comments. Now, YouTube recently said that I'm able to monetize my channel. Now, as I've said, I'm not going to do that. And several people have said in this chat and other chats, well, actually not in this chat so far, but several people have said, how can I donate to your channel? Do you have a Patreon? Do you have any way I can support you? I'll just say I don't intend to have one. I don't have a nonprofit. I don't have any ministry. I'm not a pastor. I have zero theological credentials. So I want you to know that, like, no one should take anything that I say as good, solid theological advice. I think that's really important. And if people say, can I ever donate to support you? What I try to say, I don't always say this, but what I try to say when I think about it is, you can't do anything to support me financially. If you want to do something to support me, you can like the channel or subscribe, or you can go out in the world and do something nice for somebody else. And that's fine. So I don't know. Hopefully that answers your question. Maybe that informs your perspective a little bit, Max. But I know that person had an argument. I think it's interesting. I've done some Monte Carlo simulations on their argument, but I'm just not that good a statistician that I can break down their argument. And maybe sometimes when people put an argument in this chat, I'm overly charitable at times rather than saying, I think that's possible that I've been over charitable in the past. Chronicle, you're on with us live. Let's bring you up on let's have you chat. And Max, keep holding my feet to the fire and asking me tough questions.
Sure thing.
Yeah, Chronicle, what's up? Oh, can you hear me, Chronicle?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Chronicle. I think the last time you joined, though, I'll just be honest, I think there was a lot of background noise. Chronicle, you there? Well, what's the rule? What's the rule, everybody?
You
If
won
you-
the debate.
If you, okay, thank you.
If you don't talk, Tavo wins. And usually if you do talk, Tavo wins anyway, but that's beside the point.
So,
Hey, Chronicle. Okay, I think you're back with us. We're happy to chat with you. Glad you're here. Go ahead, Chronicle.
I have something I'd like to discuss. If he's not back within like 3 minutes.
Yeah, let's go to the next topic, and Chronicle can chime in
okay,
whenever he. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Chronicle.
I gave you name of the book. Have you found it?
Oh, Chronicle. Yeah, that's
Hello?
right. You can. Yeah, Chronicle. I can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, so I gave you a name of the book. Can you download the PDF?
Yeah. Can you put the name of the book in the chat again? I've not downloaded it
Yes,
yet, and we're missing
I
it.
put in chat.
Yeah, if you put it in the chat, I'll see it.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think I took a look at that. There's a version of it on the Internet Archive that I'm taking a look at. What specifically do you want us to take a look at in the book, man?
Okay, go to the book and open 13th chapter.
13?
13th chapter.
All right. Let's see if this thing's got
And
chapter.
please share the screen that I can so I can see it on screen. Please share the screen.
Well, I don't want to. I don't want to like get too distracted. Chronicle, can you restate what the argument is from the chapter?
Okay, so basically is the argument is all about Christianity.
Can you be a little more specific?
Okay. So what I'm talking about, there is a book that talk about religions and every faith in the world and do argument in support and against it. There is a 13th chapter that talk about Christianity and oppose the Christianity.
Okay. What do you find interesting
Okay,
about
so
it?
you download the book. There are all the arguments. You saw that and answer me, is that right or wrong? And please share the screen.
Well, Chronicle, I think what might be more productive is can you give us one of the arguments?
Okay,
Like
so
one of the
first
arguments
argument
you'd like us
is,
to discuss.
okay. No, you open the book. You first download it, open the book. There is the argument.
Yeah, but how about this? I'll be on next Monday, and I will do my best to
do it
download.
now. I'm saying do it now.
Yeah, I just okay, all right. Let's see if I can find it.
I know you are.
So I can give
I
you
know
a
you are
link
knowledgeable
to
person.
the specific page. Just give me 1 second.
Okay. I shared the name in the chat.
Okay,
Read
no,
the
I've got
name.
it. I found it. Okay, chapter 13.
Yeah, I linked you to the specific page in the chat there, Tavo.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's see here. Which page is it?
So it's like page 152, 475 according to the little bar.
Okay. I'm on page. Oh, 152. Okay. There's like page number.
Okay.
So it's
Share this.
according to the book 452, but according to the little bar at the bottom of the Internet Archive, it's page 475.
Okay. Share the screen on the share the screen.
Can the sun be folded up? That's what you're. Can you give me? How about this? Can you give me a word, and that way I can search for that word?
Okay. So basically.
And I apologize to everyone for the delay. This Chronicle's been on a few times, and we just never got this far.
Okay. The first argument in the chapter is first the God created, okay, the world. He says, oh, let there be light, and
Hey,
there
Faith,
oh,
Faith,
basically he.
Faith, can you just read the words and I'll type
Right.
them into the search bar?
Right.
Okay,
So
no, can you
Oh,
share the
hold on,
screen,
Chronicle.
please?
I'm gonna read the words out. Okay.
if I was going to search for it, I'd say the religion of the Christians. And let me copy into the
The religion of the Christians.
Yeah.
I'm not getting any hits on that.
let me copy and paste something from that page real quick.
Am I able to
Okay.
give, are you
Okay,
able to
if you
share your screen?
oh, okay,
I
if
can-
you share the screen, you are not sharing the screen.
One
Share the
second.
screen.
Yeah, it's not letting me search.
So just give me 1 second. Oh, great.
There's another copy of this book that I'm looking at online that's maybe a better version of it. It's higher quality. How about this? Faith, do you want to share your screen?
Yep.
Are you able to share
I'm
your screen?
sharing it. It should look good there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me add that to the stage. All right. Okay. There we go. Hold on. I think I have to close what I'm on now.
See if I can.
Okay. Add to the stage. No. By the way, this is a great piece that On Day 3 sent me that you're seeing right now. Okay. Oh, but wait, remove other media. Okay. So I have to remove this. Okay. Now I can share it. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. Here it is. Chapter 13. And then there's a lot of text on the screen now. Is there something that you want us to focus on?
Okay, there is the argument. Okay, so first is the argument.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know that this is going to be super productive without me reading this in advance because I
Okay,
don't.
so
I just think it's not.
basically you can see on the screen the first argument is, in the beginning the God created the heaven and the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the first argument is, what is the beginning? Can you describe me what is the beginning?
Probably the singularity point at which there was no instantiation of space-time. Or
Okay, so
another
there was
way of
nothing
saying
before
that
the beginning.
is we have a singularity and there's probably a Planck space and Planck time that existed after that singularity. So in other words, the smallest instant of time,
Okay.
the smallest instant of
Okay.
space.
What-
So there is a theory that time
Okay.
is quantized. So you can say that like
Okay.
there was
So
perhaps
my question is, was there only space, or was there a matter before the beginning? Is there a matter before the beginning?
Not as we would define it, right? Because matter exists as protons, neutrons, and electrons. And in the first instance of the universe,
Okay.
there were no
Okay.
protons, there were no electrons, there were no neutrons.
Okay. Was there any proton, electron, and neutron before the beginning?
That goes to a question that Leonard Susskind has asked, and I don't think there's a way to answer it. And in his words, not only can we not answer that question, we don't even have enough knowledge to ask the right questions.
Okay. Okay. My second question is, how can God say, let there be light, let there be sky, let there be earth, and it comes front of you? How can God do that? If there is no matter, without the matter, how can he do that?
So basically, let me see if I can get your question right here. If God creates ex nihilo, then where did he get the matter from? That's what I think. That's the question that I'm hearing. I don't know if it's the question you're asking.
Yeah, and I think my answer to that is God doesn't need to create matter, right? He needs to create the topography of the event horizon, which creates the illusion of matter. And and we're not talking pseudoscience here. This is real science, that this event horizon, the topography of the surface of the universe, is the fundamental reality. And what we experience three-dimensionally is the space, the flow of space-time. But what constitutes matter is really the makeup of the event horizon, the topography of the event horizon of the universe. Any other thoughts on that? Anyone?
Okay,
I
can you read the whole 13th chapter after end this stream?
what I'll say is that the 13th chapter is significantly long, so I do not think that we'd be able to read the entire 13th chapter in this conversation here.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing. I mean, but if you, Faith, why don't we do this? Well, Human is back. Let's let Human ask a question. And then, or Chronicle, you can ask another question. And if you want to do this, Faith from Facts, let's do this while Human is talking with me. Why don't, if you're okay with this, and I'm putting a lot on your plate, but if you want, you can summarize the next argument, Faith, and then we can take that one.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do about that. Because like this is fascinating, and it's like something that I would want to probably go through in detail and read, because this is a perspective on Christianity that I don't think I've heard before, you know? So I do think that what he's linked to is valuable and interesting material.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, and I'm remiss for not reading it sooner. As I've told some of you on this channel, as I said at the beginning of the chat, and I think Chronicle's still here. I hope, yeah, Chronicle's too. As I've told you, I spent a lot of this weekend in the hospital with a dear friend of the channel who's really been a massive inspiration to me personally. And if anyone wants to pray for her name's Janice. So, but anyways, we can keep going though. So what? Let's go to Human for another question, and then if you want, Faith, you can like recap the next argument in this chapter as you're reading it, and then we'll keep going. And I'm okay doing that, Chronicle, because you have been patient. You've been here a few weeks in a row. And Chronicle, just one quick question: what is your religious background? Like, do you have a religion? Are you an atheist? Chronicle, what religion are you? Chronicle, you there? Okay, well, let's keep going. Human, we were in the midst of a fairly challenging conversation, but what's I forget where we left off, or and I know your laptop had to reboot.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure what I did. I plugged it out the monitor and then plugged it back in because I'm using an external one. Okay. Anyway.
Really quick. I think LA Apologetics 2.0 is running to Elijah's chat. That's Elijah's got a really great channel. LA, why don't you put the link to the chat in the conversation, and then we'll try to pop over there after we're done here. And again, thanks LA Apologetics for being here and for moderating. Let's keep going.
Chronicle answered the question, by the way, in the.
Oh, okay. Oh, what's the answer, Chronicle? Sorry. Do you know what the answer was?
He says, I'm from India. My religion is Sanatan Dharam, aka Hinduism.
So Hinduism. Okay, yeah. Beautiful religion. Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to say really quick. This isn't super important, and no shade at all, but just to me, arguments against like Christianity and God that have to do with like things kind of like the like Genesis, like that specifically, like certain creation things. I'm sorry. Just to me, it doesn't feel super duper necessarily compelling, because I feel like with a lot of people, it's about like personal relationship with God and like the consistency of Scripture, which is why I brought up like him commanding something bad. Not at all a problem to bring it up, but it's just saying like to me, I know, like I remember feeling that way, and like I can see that to me it wouldn't be a very compelling argument. The sun folding in or whatever. I wasn't listening very closely.
You mean the you're saying the argument for creation, the argument that God created the universe is not compelling to you?
Yes. Also, well, okay.
Or you mean the counter argument is not compelling?
Right. Yeah. Like if I don't think it would convince a Christian out of it. But I'm sorry, I wasn't listening very closely. I was speaking specifically about like the specifics of it, of like how would, if God made everything, how would that just happen? Because like to me, that specifically is not super important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think that the way I see it, there's the journey that we have is individualistic, right? I think, the path is narrow, but it's also individualistically, idiosyncratically narrow. So I think there's different pathways through doubt and resolution and reconciliation and personal revelation that we each have. I've never really experienced like a transcendent moment of revelation where I felt like, I've been personally connected to the divine. I probably never will, just because I think in very concrete ways, and it's hard for me to like even picture stuff that's transcendent. But I think my goal is never to convince somebody to an absolute degree, right? If that were the goal of scripture and the relevant resources, then I would just say, look at the surface of the moon where it says in really big letters, Jesus is God, read the New Testament. It doesn't say that, right? We live in a universe where there's at least some component of divine hiddenness. So, I think that my answer is to just sort of talk through people's doubts and have discussions with people and let them come to their own decision. There's recently been somebody who's been on the channel who said that they started going to church because of me. I find that tremendously flattering. But when people ask me, who have you ever converted? Who has ever become Christian because they knew you? My answer is 0 people. People are going to become Christian or make whatever theological decisions that they'll make because of God. And, and frankly, I think if I were in the first century Judea and I saw Jesus, and I would bring a lot of questions to Jesus, and then the answer that he would probably give me is like, you're going to get the sign of Jonah, and that's all you're going to get, because that's what he said to people who were skeptical, and so I think we meet God on God's own terms, and sometimes definitive proof for one person is not the same as definitive argumentation for another. And one more point that I'll make is that, reasoning for our theological commitments and our departures from theology is always, essentially, we know this from cognitive and psychological studies, it's always a post hoc artifice, so we always decide on our beliefs first, and then we sort of create these in the post hoc sense to kind of gloss over the imperfections in our reasoning. All right, well, faith, and that's true of atheists and theists alike, and people of all religious stripes. All right, Faith, what's the next argument that you think we should talk about?
I have something, by the way.
So from the book, okay, because I've been kind of reading it because it sounded interesting. Okay, so what happens is that it seems that the next argument in it is that God said, "Let there be light," right? But like, what happens is that if God literally spoke to light, the light would have to hear him, and light doesn't seem to hear anything. You can't like shout at light and make it dark, right? And if it's taken literally, the verse is kind of absurd, right? And then what happens is that, and I think this is actually the interesting part of it, is that God saw the light and that it was good, right? And there's kind of this question: did God only know the light was good after seeing it? If yes, then God's not omniscient because he learned something by observing it. But if God already knew it was good, why does the text say he saw it was good? And so what happens is that the Bible's description of God is kind of flawed in a way, and God can't be omniscient. And yeah, so I think on that second bit, I build in Minecraft a lot. I enjoy Minecraft. It's a great game. And I can have in my...
Really quick, before you get to that analogy, this is Tacos from Mega Bloodbath. Really fantastic channel. I think he's being a little bit chiding, just so that you all know. He didn't literally convert like 50 minutes ago. I just don't want anyone in the chat to feel bad about themselves. Sometimes I take jokes too literally. So if there's anyone in the chat who's feeling like that in their end, feel free to... he's kidding around in that perspective. All right, go on, Faith.
Yeah. So, and what happens is that I can have an idea for a redstone contraption and know that the redstone contraption is good. It's going to be satisfying in my head, but there's a certain sense of satisfaction I get when it's actually implemented into the Minecraft world. And I think that's the sort of, this is good, that is being talked about in it. And also in general, this is a kind of more allegorical sort of passage, and I think we do have to read it in that kind of way. Does that make sense? Sorry, I kind of went that
No,
way.
I think that's a really good answer. Like I play music sometimes. If I learn to play a song on guitar, I know it's going to be good when I learn how to play it. I don't have to. I don't. It's not like I learn like as I'm learning how to play something. I'm like I don't know if this is a good experience or not. Right? Like when I sit down with my guitar, learn the song, and I'm like, oh, that's good. But I knew it was going to be good. But it's still, now that I've done it, it's good. So I would agree with that. Yeah, I think that's, you can say something's good without having, needing a retrospective or prospective omniscience to do that.
Okay, do anyone use Telegram here?
I don't use Telegram. I think I've used it in the past when I was traveling internationally, but.
If I could say something real quick.
Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah,
anyone
yeah.
use
Yeah.
Telegram?
I have a topic that I would like to bring up, but really quick first, I want to comment on something that you mentioned.
And I should say we're probably at a juncture where we'll probably stop in about 10, 15 minutes or so.
Oof. Okay. Never mind.
No. But human. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Well, then I'll say this, and then I actually kind of don't want to dwell on it so much. I would like to just say another thing after. The Minecraft God thing, right? Like he can think of something, know it is good, make it, and see that it is good. That made me kind of think of like the problem of suffering, where like you had mentioned like muscles getting stronger, working out, like our souls or whatever we are deep down that can go to heaven, it can get better through our experiences on earth and the suffering on earth. But if God knew that already, and he knew the final state that you're actually just supposed to be, like heaven, the eternal thing, in all powerful God, he could have just made that in the first place. Like without the experience of suffering. Don't really want to dwell on it. I more so wanted to ask you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back. And Wesley, you're in the chat. I've muted you, but please don't take that person. It's just there's a lot of background information. So I'm going to answer this question, and then I'm unmute you and let you chat, and then we'll be around for about 15 more minutes or so. Again, I go back to the soul, the qualia of authenticity sort of perspective for that. In other words, I think you could make the argument, like, how about this? If I talk to somebody who runs marathons, who works out, and I say, what if I could just give you a magic wand and you could point it at yourself and it would transform your body to the post-workout state? Would they take that? I think the answer is often no. And I have asked people variants of that question in the past. So I don't know if that answers your question a little bit or it partially answers it. I think you did say there was a second thing that you wanted to say, so I don't want to gloss over that too much. But I do think that like the process is the journey. The journey is the goal, and the process is the journey. So it's all sort of tied into one thing.
Well,
in other words, like
that analogy, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, with that analogy, like the experience of working out feels good. Like even if it kind of hurts a little bit, it feels good. There's endorphins. You feel the wind. You're using your body. But like in heaven, you're not gonna. In the same way that when someone finishes a workout, like they can look back on the memory and be like, "Oh, that felt good." But like in heaven, you're not going to be looking at like, "Oh, when I broke my leg and I was like suffering for like however long, that felt good." It's not, you're not dwelling in that. But also, I understand not super important. I kind of wanted to just say, I know that a lot of people feel their like purpose and reason and comfort in Christianity. And I have felt that. And I do think that Christianity does a lot of good in individuals' lives. I think there's a lot of really great practices in it, like getting together for the community weekly, caring about the people around you. I think there's a lot of good culture in Christianity. And I've heard some people say like to them that shows them like God's love and that God is real. But to me, it kind of like makes sense to me why like Christianity like kind of sticks with people, because a lot of the practices are good for you. Like getting together with people is good, caring about your neighbor is good, forgiving is good, but then also for some people like they find comfort and purpose in it. But to me, that's not evidence of the truth claims. To me, it's just evidence that a lot of the practices are good for you, not necessarily like. And I think it's not a good argument for the truth claims. I was wondering if you have an opinion about the claim that like the fact that you can find purpose and reason in Christianity is an argument for the truth claims of Christianity.
I would say this. I think the sociological observation that Christianity is good for you is interesting. There is a quality of life increase that you get from Christianity. Hummer et al. Showed in a study in 2009 that if you become Christian, you go to church on a weekly basis. That's such a huge marginal incremental improvement in your health. And Wesley, I've got you unmuted now because I think that background noise went away. So, but let me just finish this thought really quick, and I'll turn it over to you. And fairly soon after that, we'll probably wrap up. But I guess I would just say that I think the argument was stronger in a world that had no Christianity. In other words, I think Justin Martyr made this argument. That to me doesn't dispel the one of the considerations, which is that that people are healthier when they're Christian. I think that's a point that gets missed in the whole dialogue. I think it gets missed by Christians who don't treasure that enough, and I think it actually gets missed by atheists who don't realize in their zeal sometimes to dismantle Christianity, there's actually not that much of a social infrastructure taking its place. So. I hope Wesley wasn't disappointed. I apologize, Wesley. Wesley had a lot to say at the last time we chatted. So Wesley, I'm remiss for talking too long, and I apologize. But let me make one other really quick point. There are specific scenarios where Christianity seems to retain a benefit that's salubrious in some regards that are particularly poignant. One is abstinence from illicit substances, right? If you take two populations of people and you say this population all right. Yeah. Okay. Really quick. LA Apologetics says, mod Alyssa OG2. I will do that right now because Alyssa has been contributing great comments to the chat. And Alyssa, I'm really glad that you're here. Let's see if I can find Alyssa OG. Walk is the man. Add as a moderator. Great.
If I could.
Yeah, I realized I was sort of mid-thought when I trailed off, but here's my point. I would recommend you check out the video that Jackie did on our channel. Jackie's a really wonderful friend of the channel, and the argument goes like this. There are benefits to being Christian. Some of those benefits are described by social engagement, but when we do the multifactorial analysis, there are other benefits to being Christian that are probably more broad than that. Now, you could rationalize your way out of that when you say, well, this comes from just a sense of purpose. I don't think that necessarily explains all the benefits. I think in particular, the two things that are missing from that are, number one, the degree to which people who are Christian can manage to avoid illicit substances to a much higher degree than people without that religious infrastructure. Number two, criminal recidivism is the other example where Christianity does seem to have a really important role in keeping people from being being criminal recidivists in that setting. Now, the only other thing that I'll say about this is I think that this argument was even more potent in an era which didn't have Christianity, meaning that there was a clear moralistic transformation that resulted in improved social welfare and improved quality of life in the Roman Empire, pre-Christian to post-Christian. Now, you can also find your way to rationalize your way around that, but I think it's at least intriguing evidence to consider. A few examples that are very concrete include, number one, the establishment of hospitals. Care of the indigent was essentially without precedent before Christianity. There was the Temple of Asclepius, but I would argue that modern hospitals, as we know them, owes at least a large portion of their origins to Christianity, to the advent of Christianity. Number two is the practice of adoption. There was essentially no practice of adoption before Christians. And in fact, there was a common process of letting your infants die from exposure. It's called infant exposure. You would just take an infant that wasn't wanted and let them die outside of the elements. Christians were the first people who said, no, we're going to take all these unwanted children in and we're going to raise them with love. And then also, if you read Justin Martyr, a lot of the arguments that Justin Martyr makes are predicated upon the social and quality of life improvements that come from Christianity becoming a part of society. Let me just put up this comment from Wesley, because Wesley, I think you did enter the chat and I was remiss for talking too long and not shining a light on you. So I do apologize for that. We're at 2 hours now, so we're probably going to close down the chat fairly soon. But shout out to Wesley. Thanks for joining. If you rejoin, I'll let you chat for a bit. Skepticus, really big shout out to Skepticus. The bigger issue is, if you honestly believe something is true, would you still try to follow its practices just to acquire the other perceived benefits? Very valid point. We talked about that a little bit in our conversation, but I'd love to chat about that more. Skepticus has a really great channel, and we did a live stream together just a few days ago. So check that out. That's on my channel, and it's also on his channel. All right, great. We're right at 2 hours now, so I think we could stop there. But I want to give a few more minutes so Wesley can join. Chronicle, I really do appreciate your joining the conversation. I hope you'll come back, Chronicle, and I apologize that I didn't read that book. I definitely am remiss. It's been a very hectic week. I will go ahead and start turning it over for closing statements. If people want to just talk about themselves really quick, maybe take a minute to say, here's who I am, here's how you can find me, here's how you can follow me, here's what you can do if you want to check out more content by me. And Max, you want to start? Anything you want to say about what you're doing? I know we're chatting some more, but go ahead, talk about anything about yourself, Max, or give any kind of closing statement you want.
I mean, I don't make content really. I gave up on that years ago. It's hard to get into any popularity. But if I ever do anything again, you'll be the first to know.
Well, that's kind of. I hope that maybe we can come up with something that we'll chat about tomorrow that will be a good resource for people. Do you do anything else, like art, creativity, anything else you want to point people to? Maybe
I used to do some art. I just been busy, and then I was in the middle of a web comic, and it came to a dead stop when I got busy, and I never got back to it again.
That sounds intriguing. I'd love to chat more about that.
Yeah, maybe I'll send you. But it's probably never going to be completed though. But you're welcome to check it out someday.
Yeah. Faith from Facts, anything you want to say? Closing statement.
So I think that there's a lot to learn from kind of hearing criticism of ideas other than kind of your own. I'm going to plug my channel, Faith from Facts, and because although I upload kind of ad hoc as things come up, I'm very likely to upload something soon that I think people might enjoy. I'm a creative. I enjoy writing and all that kind of good fun stuff, and hopefully I'll have a book out soon. So there's that too.
I will try to pop by Elijah's chat after this, by the way, LA Apologetics. So, and then Faith from Facts, also just one other thing that I would say to you is you should send me an email so we can I have a video coming out that it's a video collaboration with On Day 3, TNC Apologetics, Real Seekers, and Eastern Thomist. And we're all doing a video that's good. We're all going to contribute about 2 minutes. So I also, one of the other things that I do is I have a Facebook group for small Christian and aligned content creators. And the other thing that I do is I do curate an email list. So if you're interested in being either a conversant in a theological conversation, that's you're welcome to, feel free to join that or send me a message. Or if you ever want to collaborate or you just want to do it, talking with Tavo and talk about your journey or your resources or some content on your channel. Or if you're ever like, hey, I made this great video, let's talk about it on your channel, then, I'm happy to. You've been on a few times with me. I really appreciate it. Yeah. You're welcome to pop on with me and we'll do a talking with Tavo thing where we.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll probably shoot you an email fairly soon and we'll see what happens.
I'd love that. Human, closing thoughts.
Sorry, it wasn't letting me unmute. You do this every week at 5 or what time?
Every week, 5 o'clock.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to set a reminder, and I would really like to come back next week. And I was wondering if we could discuss your strongest points for Christianity.
I'd love that, and I will put one more time in the comment section. Oops, no, I didn't put the thing in the comment section, but just one more time, I will put in the comment section what I think is my strongest set of arguments. And let's see if I can get it. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So it's in the comment section now. So feel free to click on that. And Human, this has been a really I genuinely mean this very sincerely. This has been a nice conversation. You're asking really great questions. You've not once accused me of being a fraud or a charlatan or grifter. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. I like talking with you too. This was fun.
Yeah, it was really fun for me too. And I mean, I'm still on a journey. I'm still learning. And by the way, Walk with the Spirit on on LA Apologetics recommendation, I did make you a mod as well. All right. Well, oh, Chronicle, do you want to say anything? Any closing thoughts, Chronicle? Chronicle, you want to say anything? Closing thoughts?
Sorry to interrupt. Where are the arguments that you put?
Oh, I put them as a comment. Let me do that one more time I put them in the general chat, but I'll put them in our private chat too. Let's see if I go comments.
Oh, I didn't realize it was multiple. My bad. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know how to go to the other. Oh, here's the private chat. Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, check that out if you're interested. Well, this has been a really wonderful conversation. We got to some of the topics that I intended to talk about. We didn't get to all of them, but I feel like my viewpoints have been sharpened, and I think I've come away from this conversation with some more nuanced thoughts. By the way, there was a really fantastic conversation in the comments section, and I hope that you all will continue to keep talking with each other. On Day 3 has a really great resource that's really fantastic that I put on the screen for a bit, not long enough. LA Apologetics 2.0 is really wonderful, and thank you for modding, and thanks for suggesting the other mods. I will be going over to Elijah's chat after this, so I'll be probably lurking there and just tuning in. But I'd love to see some of you folks there. I guess my point that I want to summarize is this. I think we're all on a journey. I think epistemic humility and calibrated uncertainty are the best rudders that we can have when we're in that journey, because they show us that there's more to learn and there's more to talk about. And I think that we grow the most when we approach theological issues from a perspective of understanding our own biases, understanding our own limitations, and understanding that our perspectives are fractionated. If there is a God, I think that God knows something about all of our perspectives and is more enriched by that universal outlook on all of our perspectives. And I think from our standpoints, when we see a bit of a fractionated view of the world, we get some, but not all of the truth. So I think the way to get closer to having all of the truth is through a dialectical discourse, much like the one that we had here today. And I'm really grateful for all of it. I have put out a lot of content, so if you haven't already, please like this video. Please contribute and subscribe to the comment section. Add your voice to the comment section of this video. Click the like button, and also go to my channel and hit the subscribe button. We are really close to 800 subscribers, so it'd be really wonderful to cross over 800. I'm really having a nice time being in the learning process of theology. I never thought that as a professor and somebody close to the end of my life that I would be able to learn so much from so many people about a field that was fascinating that I had totally dismissed for most of my life. So anyways, I'm really glad to be here. I'm looking forward to having more conversations. And we are here every single Monday at 5 p.m. So that's it for this chat. I'm going to end the stream, but you can all keep talking to each other for a little bit longer if anyone wants to exchange contact information. But I hope that all of you who are out there who are listening to this chat, please have a really, really wonderful day.